Hello, Aquarius, and welcome to your 2023 Look Ahead reading. I am Sarah Mackenzie. I read as Sora for Sky Messages by Sora, Sora Sky Messages, and today we are going to use the Steampunk Mini Tarot for the bulk of your reading, which will be a card for your sign, cards for obstacles and opportunities, opportunities and obstacles in that order, and cards for what you can and what you can't control. We will be following, also a card for each month. We will be following that up with 3 cards from the Nicoletta Ciccoli to get kind of a theme for the year, as well as if there are any clarifications that need to happen. While I shuffle, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my 2023. I have been collaborating with Killer Pancake Illustration on the Haunted Tarot deck. She has organized the whole thing. She's putting together all of the illustrations. My end is really helping with some research and some consultations in terms of which cards go in the best place, helping find some of the stories. These stories are folklore and history from this area, Eastern PA, West Virginia, Western Ohio. And I'm really, really excited about it. I have been in love with her decks for a while. I'm in the cult deck. And we are going to Kickstarter on January 10th. For those of you who love the idea of being in a tarot deck, one of the Kickstarter rewards or add-ons that you can add on to your pledge is being in the deck. There are 20 cards available. And the details for that will be in the Kickstarter. They're also in the description that comes along with the countdown, which the link to that is the first thing you will see in the description for this video. So I really appreciate you checking it out, and I ask that you share it out if you can, because this is a project I'm really excited about, and I would really like to see it work and go through the Kickstarter. Okay, starting with a card for you. We have the Hermit. I'm being deep in reflection right now. It is a good time for it, being the end of the year, moving into the next year. This is a card that speaks to getting some alone time, getting some time to really figure out who you are and what drives you. I love this lantern, having kind of captured the moon, having done the shadow work, now integrating and getting to love that whole of you. Looking at opportunities, we have the High Priestess. The High Priestess is a card of intuition. She is a card of connection, both with yourself and with the other side. She is the card that asks you to trust yourself. Opportunities here can be to strengthen your intuition, to spend more time looking at the signs, working in the divination type arts, and really getting involved in that kind of way. Getting in touch with yourself, learning to use your intuition more. These are all opportunities that come with the High Priestess. An obstacle is the Nine of Swords. That is anxiety, and it's interesting because the High Priestess as opportunity and Nine of Swords as obstacle is kind of a common pattern. It reveals that idea that a lot of us who are heavily intuitive are also heavily anxious. The Nine of Swords is that card of anxiety and nightmares and worry. And when you have both, it can be very hard to pick them apart. Determining what is yours, what is your anxieties, and what is your intuition can take a lot of work. I highly recommend a journal. Really anything that helps you process, but the reason I stress journal in this case is that you can start to actively look for patterns and start to mark them off. Any way that you can really keep track of what's going on and sort out what is coming from your gut and what is coming from your overactive imagination is really good. But that's why I strive for journal. What you can control. The Two of Wands is a card of choice. And one of the things I love about it is because it is the beginning of that ambition and passion and vision suit cycle. It is the part where we are starting to figure out what exactly pursuing our passion looks like. And so these two paths may look similar, they may look very different, but the key is to just pick one. And the reason for that is that neither of them are actually going to get you all the way down the path. You need something from both. So in that sense, they are both the right path, but they are both the wrong one. But you have to go down one of them, learn that lesson, and then switch over to the next. So what you can control is your steps, making yourself go in a direction instead of getting stuck wondering what if. Keeping your options open, whether that is through research, whether that is through experimentation, exploration, testing different things, making sure that you are constantly moving forward and not worrying that going forward will hold you back. Instead, looking at it as like a side quest. Going forward will get you farther forward, even if it's a twisty road. What you can't control, death. Well, that's true. But death in the tarot is about transitions. It is about moving forward. It's an interesting what you can't control, because we love to think that our new chapters will begin when we want them to, and that our endings, our things will come when we are ready for them to. The ends of our contracts, both spiritual and physical, that will be up when we say it's up. And the truth is, that's not always true. And it's really interesting because, you have what you can control is the keep moving forward. And what you can't control essentially is which doors are going to close on you. What you can control is whether or not you go through the open doors. It's interesting when death shows up in what we think of as negatively aspected or negative positions, because it is a beautiful card. And resisting this change and this transformation comes with this stagnation. So what happens is you want what's on the other side of that door. You want what is in that new room or in that new chapter. You want to have what is on the other side of that new beginning, but you cannot get there if you're tethered, because you won't accept the ending that is required. So we talk about death as new chapters and new doors opening, because yes, something is closing, but that is how the next thing gets open. This is not a brand new start. This is a push forward from what's already happened. If it's a TV series, this is the season premiere. And no matter how much you want it, if you keep trying to go back and stay in the old room, if you keep trying to rewrite the pages of a book that is already finished and the chapter is already done, you don't get any farther. You just stay there. You can't get to what's on the other side of the room if you're hanging out in the middle of the doorway. So, no, you cannot control when the things close, but you can absolutely control embracing that new chapter. So going into the cards for every month. January, we have the Page of Cups. This is the card that asks you to dream bigger. Now, it can speak to someone new coming in, especially if you're single. It can be little love notes if you're in a relationship, but it's more likely going to be someone new. And that can be little love notes, or it can just be new advances. It can be somebody coming in who is a dreamer. Very often it asks you to dream as big as possible, which, when what you can control is the Two of Wands, where you're just constantly moving forward and finding the new thing and learning and chasing your passions. That's where I'm going to go for the majority of you with this page. For the most part, I'm going to say, is that the best you can do? Is that the biggest craziest thing you could want. And it's okay if it really is what you want and you don't want anything bigger, that is fine. But this card does ask you to play around and think about whether you could do more, could want more. In February, we have the Star. That is a card of hope. Specifically, hope after disaster, hope after shakeups. In the Major Arcana, it does come after the Tower, so it's not just optimism, like the Dreamer. It is so it's not just optimism like the Dreamer. It is about faith and hope when things have come apart. I love this with the Two of Wands Death combination because, like I said, sometimes you don't have control over which doors close. But the Star says, I know that that door closed for a reason, and I can't wait to see what opens. Going into March, we have the King of Pentacles. That can be success, particularly in terms of things like financial situations, but it is, at the very least, something powerful, something moving. He is the most evolved of his suit, so he has had more than enough. He has had absolutely nothing, and he has always found his way back to his feet. As such, he is fantastic with the resources. He is generous, but not to the point where he runs out or puts himself in a bad situation, because he knows his limits. And honestly, this feels like in March, you are going to start setting your limits. You are going to prepare your space so that whatever comes in to you comes in so big that you can do anything with it. April, we have the Nine of Wands, grit and resilience. This is the card that asks you to keep holding on just a little bit longer. So maybe that king made you feel like a millionaire and you got really excited, but then it didn't come through quite as fast as you thought it would. The 9 says we don't need to give up on that dream. You know, the page and the star weren't wrong. It just takes some time. The 9 of Wands really is the hold on a little longer card. May, we have the Two of Swords. Very similar to the Two of Wands, except while the Two of Wands is like, ooh, what's coming up? I want to do one of these, but I want it to be the right one. The Two of Swords often doesn't want to make the choice. There's a choice that has to be made, but there's a lot more concern that goes into it. And this is because the swords are very much the head, thought, logic, processing, life's harder lessons, those kind of cards, versus the wands, which are passion and motivation. So the 2 is just a little bit more suspect. She is too close to the situation. She can't see what's going on in front of her. Here it's because, you know, the blindfold. In reality, it is more of a subconscious mental block. With the Two of Swords, sometimes it is that both things look so similar. Sometimes it's that one looks much better than the other, but you know in your heart, plan B is better. It's interesting when you have it with the High Priestess and 9 of Swords pair, because it very much seems to be that same battle of intuition and anxiety. One thing I love to do with the Two of Swords is to say flip a coin. That helps relieve the anxiety by taking a little bit of the pressure and responsibility off of you while maintaining your choice. The coin isn't going to make the decision for you. The High Priestess will step in and do that. The key is to watch the outcome and then see how you react. See what your gut says. If you are disappointed, go with the other one. If you were like, yes, that's what I knew I was supposed to do, you knew that's what you were supposed to do. I always love when the Two of Swords and the Two of Wands come together too, because the Two of Wands is like the excited version of the Two of Swords. The Two of Swords is the, oh no, what'll I do? what's going to go wrong on either side. And the Two of Wands is, I don't want to miss out. If I take this one, do I miss out on the other one? So it's an interesting wave that may hit in May. June, we have the King of Swords. This can be a card of overthinking. This can be a card of overplanning. It can also be, back to that sturdiness and experience of the Kings, having learned, having gone through enough of these swords and processing and problem-solving type situations where you are able to start trusting yourself. This may be learning to use your head and work with your knowledge rather than letting your knowledge spin you out into all the things that could go wrong. So this could be some analyzing, over planning, especially if you've just made the decision with the Two of Swords and you haven't decided how you feel about that yet. But it could also be taking that lesson and realizing that you are powerful and you are smart and that you know what you need to do, and letting that be a good plan instead of a concern. July, we have the Three of Wands. That is a card of spiritual growth. It's also a card of understanding that you are not the only one going through what you're going through, and that while to some extent you are always going to go through it on your own because you are an individual and your journey is always going to be unique to you, you really aren't the only one going through it. So it's an interesting thing to realize, because while the threes tend to speak to some form of community and coming together in different ways, at the very least, interactions with people, this says, you can find people who are going through what you're going through. Getting support is wonderful, but ultimately it is up to you to walk down that path, especially because the Wands is that path of vision, and a vision is so unique to you. And so while you can discuss the fears that come with it, the ups and downs, the situations that people go through while chasing their vision, at some point you are going to have to make sure that you are doing things on your own instead of relying on the methods that worked for everyone else. You don't get somewhere unique by doing the same thing. Oh, in August, we have Judgment. Judgment is not about judging yourself. Judgment is about looking at patterns. Judging, being judicious, and objective, absolutely, but not judging in the way of bringing judgment and punishing yourself, blaming yourself. This isn't about the feeling of it. It is about action and consequence. When I do A, I get B. When I do C, I get D. I want more B and less of D, or the other way around, and so I need to do more of what gets me there. So it is a card of reflection. It is a card of taking the emotions out of it for a minute, understanding that any mistakes that you have made, that you are beating yourself up over, if they were truly mistakes, if you truly thought that what you were doing was going to get a better outcome, then it may be a mistake for you, but it was very much what needed to happen for the sake of your story. Back to chapters, we just look at this as your big moment. But really, that is how you learn. You learn by making mistakes. You wouldn't know it wasn't the right call if you hadn't done it, and so beating yourself up over it is silly. If we never take steps, we never learn. If we never make mistakes, it doesn't mean we're perfect. It means we don't try. So in August, we're going to look at all the things we've tried and decide what we want to do differently. In September, we have the Eight of Cups. The Eight of Cups is so interesting with the Judgment card, because the Eight is asking you to let go of things that no longer suit you, things that you have outgrown, relationships that you may like but seem to be holding you back. And that's so interesting with Judgment, because these could be the relationships where they are like, the people who mean well but tell you to do different things than what is working for you. They could be the people who remind you of your mistakes, not to help you learn, but to keep you in your place. These could be the things that you need to leave because while you love them, they are not getting you the outcomes you want. You know, back to when I do A, I get B. If you don't want B anymore, no matter how much you love A, you have to let it go. So September feels like the direct result of August. What we sit down and look at is what we take action in the fall. For October, we have the Ace of Wands. That is the creative spark, new passions, but it can also be a rekindling. So maybe that vision you had early on, those big dreams, that optimism, maybe it's starting to wear down. I mean, we did have the Nine of Wands and the Eight of Cups. Like and the Two of Swords. There's a lot weighing down on you. But then we make that break, no matter how sad it is, making that break from what wasn't working and starting to do what does work. That can be that renewed passion, that drive to just jump in and start going after it again. So it does feel like rekindling the spark, reigniting that creative thoughts within you and going after it. November, we have the Hierophant. The Hierophant is a card of tradition and community, but really it is about our beliefs and how they shape ourselves, and how the more we learn, the more we look at these things and our identities within community. November is a great time for the Hierophant. Shows up a lot in most years because the holidays are the perfect time to look at traditions and say, do I do this every year because I do this every year? Or do I do this every year because I love it? Does it mean something? If it means something to you, then you want to make sure you're doing it with intention and not out of habit. If it doesn't mean anything to you, then you're going to want to let go or replace it with something else. If it doesn't technically mean anything to you, but if you love it, that is still important. That is still important. Joy is important. If you do something because you love it, do it. Again, maybe put some more intention into it, but do it. In December, we have the Lovers. Now, this is a card of choice, but it is also the foundational aspects of a relationship. It is the communication. It is the agreements, what we put up with, what we won't, the discussion. And while you've had a lot of choices, and I do believe there are a lot more, this feels like the beginning of a relationship. Now, whether that is a romantic relationship or a business relationship, I think for some of you it will be romantic. I think for some of you it will be more of a business partnership. I think the biggest thing, though, that we need to look at I think the biggest thing that we need to look at is when we decide what we want and what we will do going forward and what is right for us, we do need to really look at those relationships and look and make sure that structure, that communication is there, and that if things have changed, that is communicated. So all in all, a lot of the new chapter, a lot of evolution, a lot of thought going into decisions. I am going to grab the Nicoletta now and grab 3 cards for the theme for the year. While I am shuffling, I want to thank you for liking, subscribing, sharing, and for checking out the Haunted Tarot deck and our Kickstarter. If you would like to book a personal reading, you can go to my website. For year aheads, I do recommend going with an hour. Half hour is fine for a month ahead or 6 months ahead, or something like this where it is for a group. But If we're going to be clarifying and really digging deeper, you're going to want an hour, especially because I actually use a longer spread if we're looking at a year ahead for an individual. Again, you can go to my website to book that. If you do not see a date, time, whatever that works for you, just email me and we will find something together. With this reading, I do hope that some of it resonates, but again, there are more than 12 people in the world, so it's okay if it doesn't. Take what works for you and leave the rest behind. And hopefully we'll get you in the next one. So for themes, we have the Eight of Swords. Now, looking at the Rider-Waite system, the Eight of Swords is about being trapped. In this particular deck, and really, honestly, how I read it more, it's more about kind of taking a reboot, kind of letting yourself have a break. It's regrouping. It's walking away from it or taking a step back. Not giving up, not changing things, but just giving yourself some time to rearrange and start over. Which is similar to the idea of feeling trapped, but with the Eight of Swords, we're taking a step back so we can look at solutions. With the Eight of Swords in this deck, we're really more just giving ourselves a break, to have some time off and get some of that energy back. We have the Devil. It's very similar to the Nine of Swords, and sometimes the King of Swords. Very much a card of overthinking, or avoiding things. And, you know, there are, like I said, with the traditions, with letting go of things, with having to look at our patterns, it can be really easy to want to avoid the things that we think of as mistakes. The Devil isn't about the devil. It is about the things we do to ourselves, and it asks us to face these head on. As a theme, we will probably be wrestling with that, but I know you can do it. And the Queen of Cups, compassion. Whoa, both for yourself and others, especially with the cards that you got from the Nicoletta Ciccoli. That coloring and how it kind of comes across, those three cards look very similar in a lot of ways. So even though they have very different meanings, it really feels like that, having compassion for yourself, allowing yourself to understand that mistakes are important, and allowing yourself some time to rest, and essentially always looking at things with fresh eyes. When you get overwhelmed, move away, do something else. Come back to it when you're ready. I hope you have a wonderful year, and thank you so much. Oops, so you can see all of that.